Hi, everyone. Welcome to this behind-the-scenes chat about museum work. I've got 4 fantastic colleagues from M+ who are going to share a little bit about their experiences. My name's Keri. I'm a curator of learning and interpretation here, and it's great to welcome you here for this program. So each person who you're going to meet today will take about 15 minutes, and they'll talk a little bit about their career journeys and a little bit about what their work is like at M+. We'll make sure we leave enough time for questions. So we have about 30 minutes at the end of each of their presentations for questions. And I'll do the job of looking at everyone's questions and making sure I get to ask as many as possible. So just so you know, you have a chat button on your screen, and that you should be able to type in your questions into that chat bar. That will help me see the questions as they come in. Feel free to add them as the time goes on. So if you think of something while the first person's talking, feel free to add your questions. A couple of other housekeeping items. I've popped up a form for you to fill in a really short survey for us. We just want to know a little bit about your background. We also want you to know that we are sharing this, we are recording this session for future sharing. So just so you're aware, when we're participating in this program, you might want to share it with friends, or if you couldn't, if you have to leave early, you can always come back and watch what you might have missed. So I'm going to just give you the rundown of who we're meeting today, and you can see this on the screen. So we have Jacqueline Liu, a curatorial assistant in our learning and interpretation team. We're going to then meet Ikko Yokoyama, our lead curator of design and architecture. We're going to meet Tung from our exhibition designer. And then finally, we'll end with Christel, Pesme, our senior conservator. And then we'll wrap it up with questions. So I'm really happy to get Jacqueline to get us started.
So I'm the curatorial assistant for the learning and interpretation team, and it's a team of around 20 colleagues. So today I'll be sharing some of the work that I've done in this team, and also maybe I'll be able to touch upon some of the work that my colleagues do as well. So when I was preparing for this talk, my colleague asked me to prepare an image that could best represent what we do in our area. So I looked through a couple photos that reflect the work that I've done before, and then I found this one that I think really reflects the gist of what we do. So you see here is actually one of the tour programs that we did for the SICK Prize show, and it was a tour by the exhibition designer of ours, Ashlyn Kwong, and on the right you see an audience member asking a question, and I'm in the middle. And I think this picture really reflects what we do, because what we're trying to do here in the museum is to be the bridge between curatorial vision or program vision and the audience members. So a lot of the times we act as the visitor's advocate, and we partner with different teams and think about how the visitor will encounter the content that we present, be it an exhibition or be it in talks. So we try to think from the curator's angle how they would receive those content and try to bring those content to them in a relevant way and a meaningful way. So there are a lot of things that we do, and it's really hard to put a set of border that define the exact items that we do, because our work really spans in different aspects. So as I mentioned just now, we hope to make content accessible and relevant to our audience members. We also want to provide different tools and entry points for people to access the content, because we understand that people learn in different ways and they might be interested in different things. So when we do our programming, we try to think a lot about what the outcomes would be for visitors, what they would learn from their experiences at M+. So here on the screen, you see a brochure in one of our previous shows, 5 artists, sites encountered. So exhibition text is one of the key work that I participate in the team. And if you've been to exhibitions before, you'll notice that on the wall, there are often a lot of interpretive text, wall text, labels, and you might see brochures. So a key part of what my team does is we sit down with curatorial teams, so curators, and talk to them about what are the key messages of their show. And we also develop in-gallery text with them, try to phrase or write text together with them in a way that is easier and friendly, at a friendly reading level for a wide range of audiences in both Chinese and English. Another key part of our work is also to think about the different ways that we can help visitors connect to the programs and content that we do. So here you see on the screen is an audience response station that my colleagues from my team worked with the curatorial team to put out in our previous SIG Prize show. So you see on the wall, we have a simple question that asks visitors to respond by telling us what they thought the works made them think about today. And visitors were encouraged to write the responses on the wall and, connect what they've seen with their everyday life and lived experiences. And then also another key element of our work is tours. So you see here my colleague who you've just seen now, right before me, Keri, in the docent training program. So in tour, it's a slightly different way, interpretive way of doing content. So it's a little different from writing text because on tours, we focus a lot more about interpersonal conversation and trying to create dialogues with visitors based on what they're seeing in the gallery. So you'll see here is you see a couple docents, talking with Keri and then talking about how they would connect or how they would think of ways of connecting artworks to different audience members. So here you see another kind of tour. So we don't just do tours for adult or general public members. We also do tours for different audience groups. So you see here is another program that was done by my colleague Dicky, but you don't see him on the screen, but it's a school program where they invited primary school students to tour the SIG Prize exhibition. So you're able to look or understand or see the works from the perspectives of primary school students, which could sometimes different from how we see artworks and understand, but it's also very interesting insights. On the picture, you also see a lot of different people here. So some are our colleagues and some are also educators. So we also work with a lot of different educators from different backgrounds to create programs, be it tours or other kind of learning programs for different audience groups. And besides tours and in-gallery text, we also do other kinds of programming. So here you see is a talk also we did for the SIG Prize. It's an artist talk. So this kind of talks, we also collaborate with curatorial team, and then we think of ways of trying to make the content interesting and can relate to people. So I remember my colleague Nixon, who was working on this program, he made up this question that that was the theme of the talk is how do you think art can save the world, to start off for the artist to respond to in the talk. And then we see here another online program, and then you see here also Ikko, who you'll meet in a minute. So in response to the pandemic, we also do a series of online talks. So here's just a photo that shows the behind the scenes of the kind of work that we do for digital programs. And besides talks and tours, we also do other kinds of events. And this is an event back in Art Basel last year, where my colleagues invited creatives, makers and artists to bring audience members into the Art Basel Art Fair venue and introduce alternative ways of looking at the show. So here we invited, you don't see him right now, but we invited musician William Lane to curate a walk that focuses on sound. Okay, so that was just a range of the kind of programs that we do at our team. And you might ask, so who do we often work with on a day-to-day basis? So the learning team actually works with a wide range of colleagues in the museum, so including the curatorial team, so curators, curatorial assistants from other teams. Also, we work with editors. For example, in the text that we write, we often work with editors. We also work with exhibition designers, which you also meet in a bit, to think about the visitor journey in the museum. We also work with digital team, and we also work with visitor services, docents, and we've also worked with external partners, so speakers, artists, different kind of people to curate our programs. So another question that you might wonder is, what is the difference between curatorial teams, especially curators, and the work that we do in the learning team? So there are some overlaps, but there are also differences in the work that we do. So if we say that curators, if they curate exhibitions and programs that are driven by research and content into the collections, or the field that their expertise in, for example, visual art or moving images or design and architecture, the programs that we do, on one hand, we partner with them. We think about how to deliver the programs in an accessible way to a different wide range of audiences, but we also curate our own programs that are more learning based. For example, the Art Basel special tour that we just saw. So that's, we curate our own programs, but we also work with different teams to work on their projects as well. So some other questions to just prompt us to think about the learning team and what we do, and to introduce you what we do in my work. You might wonder what my day is like, which is why I included these two photos here. So on the left, you see us planning for preparing for a docent training session, and actually a lot of my day is sometimes in the office, sometimes in the pavilion, but spent in planning events and planning programs. So we think about why we do certain programs, for whom, and how do we deliver certain programs. And a lot of that is also administrative. So I spend a lot of time, setting up meetings, facilitating meetings, doing paperwork, a lot of getting ready for things, a lot of project management. And then there's also a lot of executing work. So when the program is actually happening, we are there to, execute the program. And a lot of this work is back end. A part of our work is front facing. For example, you see me on the screen today, but that's not like a major part of our work. A lot of our work is actually very invisible and behind the scenes. So to share, maybe share a bit about how I ended up in this job. So I'm very interested in art and culture, but I actually never studied art before university, except for, when I was in secondary school, I had visual art classes, but I never really had delved into it before university. And I've had a couple past jobs. So I since university, I worked as a museum attendant. I've also worked as a teaching assistant, student observer for classes that works with professors. I've been a research assistant for an ebook. It's kind of random. And then I've also been an editorial assistant before. So it's a wide range of different experiences that led me to this work. But I think one thing that have always drawn me to learning is, I think personally I'm very passionate about learning new things, and I'm also very into sharing things with others. So I think that's one of the crucial elements that will make you want to get into the field of learning. And some other characteristics or personalities that I feel like might very fit this job is if you're also very passionate about learning, teaching, sharing things with others, if you're very passionate about art, if you're very passionate about culture, you'll do well in this job. And also if you're very curious about new things, if you want to learn about new things, and if you would like to work with other people collaboratively on delivering projects, I think these are also some qualities that would fit this job very well. So I think that's all I want to share with you today, and I will pass the time to Ikko.
Okay, hello everyone. Thank you, Keri, Jacqueline, and the colleagues here. So my name is Ikko Yokoyama. So I'm a lead curator for design architecture in the curatorial team, and then also very smooth. It was what Jacqueline said. So I can tell you what the curator does is to be curious for something. Definitely, the work you have to be love learning things too, and then also willing to share and then to collaborate. That's definitely the key things. So it's, I don't know if you guys what the curators, me you might have, which, you know, so it's so I try to give like probably the most common way people think curator is as scholars and then just reading books and researching. So I can probably want to give a little bit decoding the myth. It is, yes, that's one side, but it's not all about it. And then especially today, and then like the Empress and the work at the Museum of Visual Culture, we definitely cannot just sit and research and reading books at the library. Then you won't be a curator here. So that's the kind of aspect I want to talk a little bit. But before, so the Empress Curatorial team is we have 3 pillars, which is the visual art, and then the moving image, and then design architecture, which I'm leading the team of 5 people at the moment. So, and what we may, among the many things, maybe I should start, because that's how Empress started, was a building collection. So this is an amazing opportunity for us, and then also the people in Hong Kong, and then also to the world. Like this very highly ambitious museum project is happening in the, you know, the one of the largest ambitious project happening 21st century, and using Hong Kong as a vantage point, looking at the 21st century of art and design and visual culture history through the lens of Hong Kong. That's very unique. And then if you look at, so the, by the way, I am Japanese, so I have an Asian background, but I also grew up and I spent my half time in Sweden. So I haven't really looked at other parts of Asia until I got here. So what unique is that the Empress project is as a museum. So Asia has many great museum cultures, but often has been very, you know, the museums in Japan or Korea or Taiwan or, you know, Singapore, India, very like they've been very looking at their own history. But what the Empress is doing really transnational, and especially focusing how Asia has been connected and shaped and dialogued, and the culture exchange, knowledge exchange, even economical exchange, how our city looks like, how our culture background looks like, how it's transformed and it's morphed, and then pass it on, and still how it continues. So that's how we look at our curatorial lens. So so what we do is mostly so looking at the very roughly like the second half of 20th century, that our focus post-war until contemporary. That's the main focus. But sometimes if we have the importance relevance, why this art or design is important, we even go back sometimes to before the wartime. And then, for example, here's a few image from what the curator does often is a studio visits. So we are looking at the work, meeting artists, designers, or sometimes meeting the widow, or, you know, to look at the archive. So one picture on the left, you see there's a big triangle panel. That's actually architecture building fragment. So this is the building fragment from Expo 70. So it was a big world exposition happening in Osaka in 1970. So that was one of the big symbolic tower was built. And then, but it's, of course, it's demolished. And that was one fragment from that exhibition, has been standing outside since then. It was been very dirty. So it's actually me and then the William, my curatorial assistant, we were in Tokyo. So we need to photo shoot this to put it, we wanted to put this in our collection highlight book. But it has been standing 20 years and we never cleaned it. But there was a photographer there, so we just quickly got the buckets and the soap, and, you know, we are helping to clean the object, which maybe Christel, for talking after us, she might say, no, you're not allowed to do this, but it's not a collection yet, so it's okay and to do this. Things like this. So we look at identify particularly very interesting the object and history events. And then this exposition was very much not just about the Asian event, it's a world event, architecture, technology, design, many things. And then on the right side was the studio visit, quite recent, from Lubna Chaudhry. She has a very interesting the background. She was born in Tanzania to Pakistani family, the parents, and then grew up in northern England. And she works in a ceramic. So her interest is the kind of the meeting East and West, kind of the culture in the built environment and the city. So she gets inspired a lot of the different the decorative motifs into different cultures, or also ceramic traditions. So she makes incredibly beautiful ceramic works. So those are like, sometimes we go to the studio, maybe I've seen just on the book or maybe on the exhibition, but then very often to understand the in-depth of the work is to meet the designers and artists. So if they are alive, so our primary, the main, most of the time we travel where they are and see the works, and then also really, because we're talking about the physical object, it's not just distributed online. So it is our responsibility to also all the nuances, tactilities, everything is what is in the object to examine. That's a very important part. And then, so here also the pimping that we also will speak afterwards. Then this is just a screenshot of then we also plan the exhibition. So that's what we have collected. So it's very important how, because we have always too many stories we want to tell. So then Keri and Jacqueline comes and no, that's too many things. That's too dense, too much ideas. Can you make it simple? Can you say it easier? Blah, blah, blah. That's very often our work, because we've been such a diving into all the time on this our journey, and but our job is so depending on to how to translate those our amazing the stories together with the learning teams and also the exhibition designers, and then to exhibition to be access to everybody. But so it's of course every curator, I want to show this, he want to show that, and then so it's always constantly this planning. But this is an absolutely exciting moment when it suddenly start to come to see in the form of the exhibition. So at the moment, this is a kind of the sketch which we are working towards our opening next year. And then here, so when then they have like a plan, then architects comes, hey guys, this is the size doesn't match what you say, and then this like, do you want to so you have to protect these works. And then so very often, so this was a very recent trip I have to, so that we often have to visit our storage with a conservator to checking the object, the condition, is it how fragile it is, can we really show it, and then how, if we want to make a case, what the height. So it's, you see, it's very hard. So I'm crawling on the floor and looking at the underside of the sculpture, discussing with the exhibition, the manager and the conservator how to do. And so it is not, because it's, I personally believe very important work of the curator is not just on your desk. It's really much how to translate them. And then so then also, so we do a lot, so the mediator, so Curator is a kind of mediator as well to the ideas, and then particularly for M+, because since we're building a new building designed by Swiss architect Helzo de Melon, so it is a very artisanal, very crafted, beautiful building we are getting in Hong Kong. So I have been in charge of documenting the progress of the building since 2016. So we sometimes go to the construction site and see the building progress. So, and then walk through with our videographer, photographer, to make sure, because once it's built, it's everything covered. So we documenting the progress, and then also do the interviews of different stakeholders. So this was the last week. So we were interviewing the Kvadrat, is a Danish textile brand, which they will contribute a beautiful textile work to our cinema, curtains, and also the conservation tower and so forth. So also as a design curator, I'm very interested how things are made, and then why we're using this, and then how it's made. So through the video, so I will try to, kind of documenting the M+ building progress. And then so I have for 5 minutes, so I can talk a little bit how I got here. So as I said, so I've been in Hong Kong now for 1.5 years, and before joining M+, I was living in Stockholm. So I was there for 21 years, And so, but my background is absolutely eclectic. I've been doing a lot of things, but the 1/2 time, so I was working at the Konstfack, it's the State Art Academy in Stockholm. So I was working 11 years as a head of exhibitions. So simply I've been working with students and professors and to organizing exhibitions, symposium, you know, every year working with the graphic. This is a kind of graphic identity. I've been working with this. Usually we invite the recent graduate students to pitch their graphic identity ideas for the grad show every year. So it's every diverse, it's not templated to give a platform to, but it's also totally experimenting the format of what is exhibition, but because it's not with a museum, so anything goes attitude. So that's what's been doing. And then the other things, so also I've been doing a lot, like I've been writing for the Japanese newspapers for 15 years because I didn't want to forget about my language. So very much writing about Scandinavian design, art and architecture to Japanese media. But this was one of my most closest to my heart project is of course Editions in Crafts. It's a little non-profit organization. Me and my Dutch curator colleague René Pat, we started 2008. So it was a random idea. Let's apply a grant to, because we were, you know, always too busy with the normal work and writing deadlines. Let's do something more what we really want to drive my passion. So this was a project. So we remain the curator as a mediator, but my background is also craft design as a fundamental background. So we are very interested in the craft, and then also craft is which is my background is very useful to M+ as well for the research, because craft is a very much the technique and then the method which travel all over the world, thousands of years. So then there is always related the concept of societal situations and economy and then war and things like that. So we were interested why craft is disappearing in particular way, because of course it's something a lot of cheap things available, labor is more expensive and so forth. So we are investigating the reason of why craft disappears through making projects. So we usually invite the crafts people first, not the artist or designer. So very often the case is they maybe have a very beautiful craft artisan group. Then usually invite artists and let's collaborate. And then, but then the makers remain as a maker, and then artists and designers say, oh, can you change the pink and yellow? And that will sell best in the market. So then in that case, the artisan, they never learn why pink and yellow was better than usually she does in brown. So this kind of the almost colonial way of the kind of relationship the craft often has, which we wanted to question. So we start with the craftspeople. So anyway, I've been working with these amazing ladies in South Africa for 6 years. So it's a little non-profit project. So we've been traveling between Stockholm and South Africa a couple of times to initiate the workshop and then to make the products. Because those ladies, the usual craft they make has a no market, but I don't have a channel to sell their craft, but we know what the certain market or certain platform we can exhibit there, enhance their creativity. So we didn't go with like an NGO, like here's the project, I say, you know, the job, but we developed a certain specific products. So which I bring to the exhibition to the another international market, so then that's bring a little extra income for the ladies, and then they can use that money to contain their own things. So that was one of the projects I was doing. So I think it's there to be not the conclusion, but I think it's to have definitely. If you look at any artwork or design or architecture, it's so much information, not only about technique, not about the philosophy, not only about, you know, the ideas. So I think you put yourself in so many different levels of your life and production, and things are made, and then that's very useful to be a curator, I believe. And then also one last thing for the museum business is absolutely interesting, and you know, a lot of encounters happen. But it's also what I really want to envision in the future of the museum is that we can be quite material resource free, not environmentally friendly business can be, because we build a big museum and an exhibition, then maybe we have to throw away the lot of flames and the walls, or so sustainability in a museum that haven't been very much addressed in a 20th century museum model. But I think that will be very much our future to think about how we can kind of incorporate more thinking, which is not only our effort doesn't will help, but we have to really work on the larger scale. And then also I think a museum to do the exhibition can be a platform to kind of bring those discourses and discussions as well.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ping. I'm an exhibition designer at M+. As you know, or you don't know, designer love briefs. We always start with a brief that telling us what to do, what's the needs, and what's the expectation. And then we do the very best of we can to answer the brief until the very last minute. This is pretty much the principle of how designers work in our design practice. So thank you, Erin and I, giving us a brief, and here are my answers. Could you share your previous experience that led you into this position? So I did not study architecture nor interior design while I was in uni, and that led me to this position. Yes, I wish I did, because it will be very helpful for what I'm doing now, especially when we have to plan the opening exhibitions along the museum building under construction. Anyway, I was initially trained and practiced as a graphic designer. I worked in different design studios after graduation, and then I joined the Hong Kong Museum of History, whereas my design practice got evolved from 2-dimensional to 3-dimensional. So most of the projects I worked there were graphic relevant at the beginning. Exhibition identities, poster, booklet, invitation, but also signages, wayfinding, exhibition labels, text panels, marketing banner, flags, billboards, etc. All kinds of adaptations in various of scale and viewing distance. I guess that's how my spatial or 3-dimensional sense got enlightened at the time. So one day I was invited to work on a very small scale exhibition with only 22 exhibits in a 24 square meter space. I was told that most of the exhibits are flat, so it's pretty much like similar treatment to graphic design. And so I took that challenge. The exhibition was very small indeed, yet the design experience was very impactful, very charming to keep me doing exhibition design since then. So the next question is working in a visual culture museum making any difference to the work you do in your position? So because the only museum I worked at was History Museum, and so that would be the only museum I can compare with. Actually, the two museums have quite different approaches to exhibition design. Historical artifacts are not necessarily self-explained. So contextual materials like text, images, audio, video are very essential to help visitor understanding the content. Hence, the design for historical exhibition are usually more descriptive and reflecting the relevant time and theme. While in M+, we are a visual culture museum. Most of the objects are visually appealing, interesting, or self-explained. So what we focus here is if the work is well protected, yet it is accessible to all groups of visitors. The other thing is if the presentation is aligned with artist's intention, and if the display is visually coherent and not interfering other works that shares the same space. So we try to keep the presence. We also try to keep the presence of joinery quite minimal, so we let the works shine. The next question is, how would you describe your work and what do you do on a daily basis? As a museum, M+ is the space, the objects, and also the people, our lovely colleagues. So we reach out our audience through programs, exhibitions, and events. Therefore, exhibition is a form of media that we communicate. And to get this communication going, designers have to understand the needs and the limitation of each component, space, object, colleagues, and audience. Then we work together as a big team and provide solutions. Okay, I know this is still sound very big. You don't know what I'm talking about. And so I have an example for you. This is a work by Wang Jing from our SIP collection. You can Google it online. It's on our online platform. It looks much better than my doodle. So it's a rope. It's made of PVC and it's transparent. It got front and back, and it looks light, but it's actually quite heavy here. When we have a deeper conversation with curatorial team, conservation, registration, and installation teams, basically all teams in M+, we also realized we would like the work to be hung. So it looks like floating in the air, and it can be viewed from both sides. It also has a very sticky surface. So that means we have to contain this work in a sealed environment to prevent dust and also allow tools to absorb harmful gas. Right, so we need a showcase. But what kind of showcase? What about a clear top and 4 sides of glasses? This is the kind of showcase I always prefer because it's the most minimal one. But we have to hang this. We need a hanging structure for this work. So this type of showcase is not working here. So what about a hood with 4-side glasses? So the hanging structure can go onto the hood. But this is a huge showcase. It's 3 meters by 2.5 meters. So it would also need some sort of support structure for the showcase itself. Then what about a single-sided glass showcase? It will have all the support it needs from the side and the back. But then what about the back of the work? We need to show that too. So the final solution is to have a double-sided glass on front and back, and we get the support from the sides of the showcase. Okay, so we got the showcase chosen, but then how did the install team and conservation team get in there and do the installation? So it is a very shallow showcase due to the space limitation. So do we install the object first and then put the glass on? But then again, that glass is huge. It's very heavy to lift. Do we want to take that risk? Or do we have the work installed on a sliding rack and then slide the whole work back into the showcase? But do we have enough room to do that? Maybe we should install this work first so that it won't bump into other objects around it while we're doing install. Okay, so these sorts of conversation go on and on in my brain, and also more importantly across our colleagues and teams. This is what we do actually every day. When we reach to a certain potential solution, I visualize them on floor plans, drawings, or 3D models. Then we meet again, we review the design, repeat the whole process all over again and again until we have a final solution. Just now we went through one object. For the opening, we're gonna have over 1,000 objects on display. So yes, we are now all working very hard to make this happen. Which part in your job do you find most interesting? Right. So the collection of M+, it's in all sorts of forms and medium. We have objects that are over 10 meters long. Objects are made of human hair, human fat, living fish, Objects are taken from actual architecture buildings, just like what Ikko have mentioned, or even the entire sushi bar. So most of them are quite challenging to put on display, but I'm working with some of the most enthusiastic people in this world here. So everyone is very committed and very willing to push through the challenges together. I think it's everyone's fearless vibe here that makes me loving working in M+. If there's one thing you would like to change in your work, what would that be? I would love to have a stanchion-free or no signage-free exhibition. I know these are all protections to the objects or sometimes the visitors, but not meant to make the exhibition unwelcoming. But why do we have to be told not to touch things? Why can't this be just a common sense? Just like you don't go and touch a stranger's shoes when you like them. What I'm trying to say here is that we should be more transparent on museum operation and practice, helping visitors to understand why certain objects have special needs and what visitors can contribute to protect the work. I hope this will eventually become a museum manor across Hong Kong and maybe become our international museum manor. So thank you everyone staying with us for our sharing. I hope you had a better idea what exhibition designers do. So next we will have Christel, Senior Curator, to do the sharing.
Okay, thank you. A pleasure to be among so many good people and with challenging questions. So I'm Christel, I'm a Senior Conservator, and the mantra of Conservator of Contemporary Art is to remember the future. So close future, far future, meaning censoring a little bit the question of ping, I hope. It's when we put on display and give access to a collection, it's really important, but we also have to think of the next generation, and conservators are working for that. So we are working around collection always, collection items. So a little bit of definition, and I will not read everything because you can do that, but globally, what we want to do as conservator and what we are in charge to do, conservator and collection caregiver, it's to manage change in collection item in order to extend the life of the collection item to support the physical use and intellectual access for not only this current generation, but also the future. So we are trying to do that by limiting the rate of loss of information and significance, because collection items are always items with significance. Otherwise, they would not be part of the collection. So the foundation beneath these aims, it's really the need to understand items in all their complexity: fabric, structure, function, and meanings. So it's one of the reasons it will be part of my talk. Collaboration, once again, it has been shared by all of other speakers. It's at the core of the work of conservators. So conservation main task, in order to support the access, the safe access to the collection. I will not go through all that, but globally we have 4 sort of areas of activities, and each conservator will be doing a little bit of each. But then we collaborate. We collaborate within the team and also with other stakeholders, internal stakeholders, so curators, for instance, because we will be trying to support their idea, interpretation of the collection, but also to try to do that in a safe manner in order to give access, but also to keep some access for the next generation. So we'll be also collaborating with external stakeholders, which we need to understand, especially in contemporary art, the intent of the artist and how it's embodied into the materiality. So that is not always given. So it's a very important discussion to have curators why they collected the item, why is it important, but also the makers or the artists, how they did that, why. So it's really, it was interesting to listen to Ikko on that. The materiality for us is really something quite important to better understand and to value. So working in collaboration with all these people, what so we are doing is doing some research and documentation of the collection items and the collection in order to support current and future access and use. When I'm saying use, it can be many different, it's not only exhibition, it's research, it can be learning program, there's many uses of the collection within a museum. And also, I'm not seeing all that. So after that, we are trying to communicate and to also educate in order to raise awareness. And to answer your question, Ping Ping, about I dream of a museum where there's not so many obstacles, but I believe that it's also by collaborating with the stakeholders, the audiences, the communities, for them to understand that it's their collection, in fact. And it's the best way, I think, to care for a collection, but it takes a bit of time. So I will be providing some photos now of the work of my colleagues, in fact, preparing traditional items for display. It's a main task, but it's not the only task, but the main task, and we are focusing very much because we are preparing the opening of the museum. So for display, safe display, of course. So what we need to do is to document the items, and we have, in order to do condition check. And the condition check is this little form that you are just seeing appearing, and that is helping us to have an understanding of how the item should be and to manage and to monitor the changes. It's helped us to regularly assess if there's a deterioration, and if yes, how should we be answering to the issue at stake. So it gives a sort of reference of for the future care of the collection. So all that to assess need also for treatment and for safe display. I will be showing some pictures later on that. Okay, we also, in order to prepare the display of the collection items, and especially for paper-based and photo collection, so objects with 2Ds, we have been with the various colleagues, we have been developing a framing project. So that is really an important aspect because it's a way to protect the artworks on display, but it's also a presentation mean. And when we do that, once again, it's based on collaboration. So we are meeting with curators in order to understand how they want to present the items. And we have many options and they have to pick and select. And then we work with framing locally in Hong Kong. So another example of preparing traditional items for display, for pictures, different size and scale of different collection items. So we are working very much in storage, or in the future, it will be in conservation labs. So with where the items are safely stored. And usually we are discussing when needed conservation treatment and display options with curators, because they are we need them to guide us in how we are, how it should be presented, and how again the significance is embodied in the materiality. Sometimes it's important, sometimes artists want the item to change, so it's fine. We should not be stopping every changes. We should be slowing down the unwanted, unintended changes. So we need to have this understanding, and it's thanks to the artist and to the curator. Then we can propose a treatment option if it's needed. Whoops. It's not working. Oops, sorry. It's not working very well. Okay. Okay, I'm back. On track, yes. Many pictures to also show the different colleagues from the conservation team. We are about 10 now, so you have object conservators, painting conservator, photo conservator, paper conservator, art installation conservator and digital conservator. So this team is really has been assembled to answer all the needs of the collection items, meaning that a digital conservator will not do exactly, you will do the same thing, but not using the same ways and means to protect and to safely give, to give safe access to the collection. So usually conservators are based on either materiality or type of risk. So the specialty, I will be speaking about the training after. So as you can see, the different colleagues involved here, and also 2 interns that we have had 3 interns over the past 3 years, and 2 of them are now studying conservation, which is wonderful to know. And I hope they will be there being trained abroad, because there's no training in Hong Kong right now. So they are in Amsterdam, but there are many different places with specialized training around Hong Kong. So I would like also to touch base on also preparing less traditional items for display. And I'm taking examples of Charlene's own lines that was on display in exhibition at Pavilion in 2018. So it's the 2 bags of leaks, plus there's also a single channel video. So I will be focusing on how to prepare, and it was also a collaborative effort, this nest of leaves. So 3 months before opening, somewhere in the fields, so with colleagues from, so Kiran Champion, who is a senior installation team, and Natalie, who is our one of our 2 object conservators, were picking some leaves, the best one, of course, and then collecting the leaves and taking care of how to collect the leaves. And as you can see, also Howard Wong and Nelson Su, who are part of the installation and exhibition teams, were helping. So collaborating. We need to then store the leaves and dry the leaves and freeze the leaves, because some of them were infected by some animals. So many, I'm trying to make it short. So then we needed to install the leaves in the pavilion in the nest. So Natalie and Nelson were working together with also the curator Pauline Yao, that was helping us to have a better sense of how it should be presented. And sometimes it's a loving effort. It's always a loving effort to install artworks. Another example, and then it will be the last example, in preparing less traditional items, especially for contemporary art, can be an item like the one presented, which is a work from Nanjun Pike. So where we need to do the condition check and the documentation of the physical components, but it's not enough there, because we also need to check the functional aspects with old TVs, CRT TVs, which can be quite complicated. So this is just one of the challenges, quite interesting, with the collection of FEM+. So the conservation decision making, I will be very going fast. We need first to understand, we're in collaboration with curators, artist maker, what is significant, what is important in this item. And then we need to consider the physical properties, the condition of the collection item, and specific vulnerabilities, because that is helping us to understand what should be preserved. And it permits also to formulate a strategy for the longer term access of the items. Then we need to take into account the use of it, the intended use. So we have been speaking about exhibition, but it can be other, because each use will bring some challenges. So that will be helping us to identify and prioritize actions. So the overlap of all that, it's what we say the conservation decision-making zone. And we need the input and the help of all the colleagues mentioned. So who are conservators? And it's my last slide. So the expertise is we need to slow down mechanisms leading to damage, loss of significance, and information. So we also sometimes we need to treat the symptoms of the material deterioration in order to aid interpretation. Sometimes it's so the material of the item is so deteriorated that we cannot totally understand, and then we need to act upon. And this will be always with the validation of the curators. Code of ethics, remembering the futures, we always need to balance the present need of today as well as the future needs to use in the future the collection. So also we need to respect the authenticity of cultural item, meaning that if we act on the materiality of the item, we don't want the item to become our own items or artwork. It's not, we are not really interesting and not artistic, really gifted artistically. So it's one of the reasons we need to inform and to have an informed, argued and documented action for the future to understand the life of the item. And we are organized, as I said, by artistic material typology or type of risk potentially inducing damage. And finally, we all have a master degree in conservation. You can check online, or I can answer your question if you have any about where to find such a degree training. So globally, we need to combine, and it's one of the exciting aspects, art technology, art history, processes, material of deterioration of material, which is chemistry and physics, but not being super good in that, but understanding it's enough. And also, of course, to have skill and skills. This is really important to work on the items, but also to understand how it has been fabricated. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everyone. That was really illuminating, and it actually made me realize that while you guys were all talking, we were actually talking about making an exhibition. And I think when we put together this talk, we didn't think about all those aspects, but actually this group of people would really actually quite often be in a room together having these conversations. So it was interesting to hear all their perspectives on how that works. So I have a few questions that I'm going to ask to the group. Bear with me because I have to filter from our online chat, and a few people are asking similar questions. So I think the question I'm going to start with is really for Ikko. And I think a few people have asked this question, which is their future path or professional background that people need to get into curating. So I think you spoke a little bit about your trajectory, but maybe thinking more specifically about formal education or kind of more formal opportunities. Could you talk a little bit about that, like museum studies or art history, or how you want to, how you would actually frame that conversation?
Yeah. Sure. Yes, sure. Yes, it is like I said I have the correct. That's what I've been doing after my study. So like because I'm an old person, so I'm not like I'm not like you guys. So it's like I have a long working years, and so that I mean like a diversity. Yes, study-wise, there's like a curating is roughly 2 types, but it's like the straightforward and the very important is that actually you have art history. So it is like you have to learn how to look, how to understand the art or design or architecture. So design history, architecture history, art history, it's essential, which also it's a little bit like a new, so to say, curating that people are missing, which I miss a little bit. But it's, also design history is, or art history, you can also read parallel. So it's, I don't really say you have to have at the university as well, because to study the history of idea, philosophy, sociology, those are also very great. But it's also what I'm saying, like it's a mini curator also has the practical, the study visual art to like art school, like an art or architecture, also journalistic. So it's more like the someone what the most essence is like it kind of searching and digging. You have to be able to target something, your research object, the topics you'll be able to. But so you can come from many different ways, but it can be, because that's the kind of what we contribute is a part of history writing. So whatever we kind of put in exhibition or in a collection, that means we continuation for the, as Christel said, it's our future audience and the future. So it is important to be very responsive job to able to say this is very interesting to preserve and to tell the story. So actually, so that's a parallel. It's important. But then yes, it is the art history. It's in Hong Kong also, but it is a particularly curatorial studies, which is probably emerging type of studies, I should say, only from mid-90s. And then particularly so far, it's a visual art curatorial study is more common. The just design curating, it's a very, very few. So for example, my background study, so I studied the design, craft design as a history and the practicing, like making things. And then my postgraduate was a curating, but that was my time was no design. So my contemporary curating degrees is in contemporary art. But also, yeah, I didn't want to never categorize design architecture. So it is, sorry, it was a bit long.
Thanks, Ikko. I think what you spoke to is sort of probably in parallel to what other people might say. And I'm going to direct this next question to Jacqueline, which is a little bit more specific, which is to say someone's asking if they, and Ping, you might want to chime in here too. The person asking this question grew up in Hong Kong and they're doing their university studies here. Do you think their local background would make it difficult for them to enter a curatorial position? But I would say, like you'll notice here, we have sort of 3 international speakers and then 2 local speakers. So I guess maybe speak from the local perspective. What did you go to school here? Did you leave? What do you think about coming up through the system, and maybe what M+ is looking for in terms of the local curatorial frame?
Yeah, let me try. First, I definitely don't think that studying here would make it difficult for you to enter a curatorial position here. I actually think it's a very strong advantage. I personally, however, I studied here all the way up till secondary 6, and then I went abroad where I went to the States to study philosophy and studio art. But throughout those years, I kept coming back to Hong Kong where I did a couple internships, which I actually think added most, equipped me most with my path then in the art scene and also here at M+. So I actually think that if you're from here, do take opportunity and advantage of being here, and just go around often to, go to different galleries, go to different art shows to get a sense of what it is like, what the art scene is like here, what are the concerns of artists, and most importantly, what the industry is like. So if you go to talks, you hear curators talk, you hear artists talk, just to get a sense of how people think. And I think this would really help you when you want to, enter curatorial position. And I think also internships are very helpful. My first internship was editorial intern with Art Asia Pacific magazine. And I think that was also one of the best experiences I could have had, because as an intern, I was doing a lot of fact checking for the articles that would be published in the magazine. And that actually helped me to understand the scene in the region as well. It equipped me with a lot of knowledge that way. So I don't know if Ping could also speak to
Sure. So I had my high school in Hong Kong, and then I also, just like Jacqueline, I went abroad and studied graphic design in Melbourne, Australia. And then, but after graduation, I returned to Hong Kong and worked as a graphic designer in different types of design studios. So I don't think being trained or working local is an disadvantage to work in the museum industry, especially it's a Hong Kong-based museum. For design, a lot of things or productions, construction will be produced or made locally. So, and it's very important to communicate with your contractors. So I think language and understand the culture is definitely a plus rather than a minor. And so, I also think the most important thing, like whether you study abroad or locally, the most important thing would be you are always curious about how things happen and what next and why does this happen. Like you always have a very curious mind, so you will push yourself, keep learning new things. So yeah.
Okay, let me ask a question to Christel. This one is very specific. If this individual would like to be a museum conservator, is chemical knowledge compulsory?
Yes. But okay. Very often in the international school, yes, you will need to have a test in chemistry. It doesn't mean that you need to be a chemist. So, and especially what is interesting is if you start to understand why it's important, and it's important because it's part of the reasons why materiality can change. So when you start to focus on what is interesting for you, then chemistry is much easier. So it's I have a chemistry background myself, and I quit it to become a conservator. So it means that it's not. I think with motivation and with understanding of why it's useful, and understanding that you will not become a chemist, it's fine. It's the level requested is not. You can reach it. So good luck.
Thanks, Christel. Ikko, here's a question I think you might be best suited to answer, which is, where do we come up with ideas for exhibitions?
Well,
and how?
How? It is very much your own interest. I mean, definitely something, the things that you want to communicate, you want to tell. So that's driving, because that's a definite driving force. But museum like M+ is of course because we look at the collection, and then you're studying the. So you probably have to see the kind of how you can stitch what's the connections, what the lines between the object and the artwork seemingly very different or something. So you have to kind of, it's always looking for something, because it's art history and design has been written so many times, so many thousand years. So we always still never done it. So there's always the endless way. But maybe personally, I reflect what the world we are living in at the moment, what's the kind of mood people want to know, and what the message through, because sometimes, so I talked about sustainability, for example, in exhibition making, but if I really think it is now it's plastic, I really have to fight with plastic waste, then maybe let's make exhibition, but not just be too preachy, just this the plastic waste, the banner, but it's also we can act those themes much more poetically or another way to, so you can kind of little seeds of idea, then you always can expand, but it is very different. Some the scholars and the very historian, then there's a particular moment but it is every curator, what they will do is always try to make it relevant to our time. So that's probably most important. Yeah.
Great, thank you. I think that's a really good reflection on how to come up with exhibition ideas, because making a museum is for the public, and then thinking about sort of what they're bringing to the museum is an important part of being a public institution. So I think that's something we all have to contend with, even though people with their hands want to touch everything, which probably all of us like, except maybe, and Christel. So a question that is put out here for a few of you, and I'm going to ask every one of you to answer it, which is, so you each play a different role on the exhibition team. So if you think about it, you're each coming to the table with a different perspective. At the time where you made your decision to be to become what you are in this team, was there something that sort of got you into that one role? Like maybe Jacqueline, you went and did studio art, but maybe you wanted to be an art curator, but you didn't. So maybe everyone can kind of talk about the moment where they put the hat they wanted to wear, if that makes sense to you guys. Jacqueline, why don't you start?
Okay, maybe I can backtrack a little, like to go back to when I was a university student. I was interested in art, and I thought to myself, like, what's the best way to learn about art? So I was choosing between majoring in art history or studio art, and then I chose studio art because I felt like, you know, I want to learn how the artworks are made so I can understand how an artist think. And after I graduate, I wanted to be a curator. So my first job was actually at Tycoon, and I was just a curatorial assistant. It wasn't like education or curatorial, like it was just curatorial assistant for the team. And I went in not really sure what I wanted to do. So I was, you know, looking at curating, but also I was also, you know, helping with education programs. It was actually kind of a coincidence that I got slotted more into doing education programs, and then I realized I found the experience of doing docent training and being in the gallery, explaining artworks to people, trying to you know, make connections to them, and then have audiences look at an artwork and then have their own angles to look at it and relate to it in their own ways, to be one of the most rewarding moments of my job. So after that, I was more certain that I wanted to do more of this. Not saying that I'm not interested in curating. I think if you are in the learning team, you also, you know, you should be interested in how things are curated and why curators want to put certain objects together to talk about an idea. But I was more interested in kind of like communicating or, you know, making objects relevant to people. So I think that was my moment where I decided I wanted to go into this stream.
So for me, I was always like, I grew up as a very curious kid. I was wondering how things happen and how did it happen, asked lots of questions. And also I'm very much into art and design, craft, you know, beautiful things. So I'm basically a very visual person. Visual in a way, I prefer graphics, drawings rather than text. And I know if I want to be a curator, you can't just don't write anything. I prefer drawing over writing. So that's one of the big hints that I should go for something graphical. And just like what I mentioned earlier, like I was originally working as a graphic designer, but I mean, in a design industry, even you were trained as one type of designer, it's not like when you're out there and doing work, it's you're not restrict yourself into certain area. They just come to you. You have to do certain things, maybe slightly three-dimensional or not. So I think you have to be quite open and, you know, just willing to try new things. And then so I got like different opportunities to do like a bigger super graphics, and then eventually I also got invited to do some volunteer work for like small exhibition, individual exhibition. You know, you just always got friends around like to ask you to do something. Like I know free pitching is not a very good idea, but you be open and see, you know, if you are interested and you have the time and you're willing to do, just try more different kind of things, and you just start slowly finding your way to know like which it's suit you best. And so here I am, you know, took the very first small challenge for a small exhibition. Then I just see lights here, staying there, and yeah, it just kept me happy to, you know, willing to solve problems. Not saying other people are the problem, but like problems just happens every day, and I just like the feeling that we can come together and work out a solution. So yeah, that's why I'm being an exhibition designer.
Yes, I have a very particular moment. It's actually 2 days after I got my own studio. That I can say quickly. So, I mean, the two things. So I've been studying very long time. So it's both like a history of idea, art history, but it's a fundamentally. I was doing the craft and design, like a making, even though I was maybe not good at it. But it was like because I went to school too long. So then. And the school is always fun with so much friends, and it was fabulous. And then I was just totally believing, so I was just reading all other theory to be an artist or to be a designer. And then after graduations, I got the beautiful studio, share with my friend. But after day 2, oh my gosh, this is very lonely, you know, because then you have no friends anymore. No one give me a task, so I have to make a task myself. And I panicked. No, this is absolutely not what I want to do. So then I have to call my parents in Japan. I'm very sorry, you know, you supported me so long time, but I want to change my subject or I'm definitely nothing. I'm totally handicapped to other things. Have to be in the art world, the design, architecture, but I need to be a curator. So I need to go to school again. So that was the kind of, yeah, because it's like, you know, so I think I want to warn you, like, and also who does a school career, non-break, it's very, also that learned me, like in Sweden was, many people take a break between the studies as well, to have a perspective. But, you know, Japan was very much from high school to university, you know, doing like this. So it was non-stop. So then I was believing this is what I'm going to be. But then suddenly, like, took only 2 days to me, oh, I wasted my 6 years studies, you know, so, but it wasn't wasted, luckily. So I think sometimes very important you just a little bit doubt or like a bit skeptical the study what you're doing, and then that, you know, so also try to situate yourself a little bit outside, and that was really important for me. Yeah.
Interestingly enough, it's also
your chemistry thing.
Yes, exactly. So yes, I study chemistry, science, and because I'm also coming from a background of math teacher, and so middle class, and so I was good at school, did that, and then in fact I became very interested with vision. I study physiology, vision, and what was fascinating to me is the fact that part of it I could not explain. So what became very, very interesting is the fact that, okay, I could understand the neurological aspect of it, but this was not what was fascinating. What was fascinating in the art was there's an agency, we see stuff, and this, I cannot explain it. It's poetic, it's magical, and this became, you know, triggering my interest in, okay, what can I do with that? It's so important to, you know, this art stuff. And I was coming from math and chemistry, is fantastic. It's touching me. It's so all of a sudden I became much more, and I was lucky. I was in Paris, access to a lot of museums, and I became more sensitive or interested into this agency of art. How can an object touch me? You know, objects are supposed to be animated, and you are supposed to take samples and to analyze. And there was something else going on. And I felt also that the experience of time, and we are back to the remember the future, is also important. It was anchoring me in a place, within a trajectory, with others. So all that started to be very meaningful for me. So then I thought, okay, how can, so because in order to better understand, I started to another study, art history. So I had a master in art history, and then at the end I was like, okay, let's become a conservator. And so yes, like you, Ikko, I believe that, and it's maybe, let me share with you younger people, listen to yourself also. So life is also about navigating different experiences and building on that. And I believe that it's quite important to maintain that there's not only one way or one successful way. So I'm not a math teacher, but I'm very happy to be a conservator, so it's fine.
Christel, I'm going to put you back on. And maybe it's along the lines, but we have a question from somebody who says they have a bachelor degree, but it's not about conservation at all, but they have an interest in it. What would you advise to be like a next step in their career?
if you can, do an internship. For instance, so there are different ways. Huh? There's also, if I'm not mistaken, there's also possibility at LCSD Museum. I'm not from Hong Kong, so I do not know so well, but explore that. You can. There's a program of internship at M+. Now we are not welcoming interns right now because we are just focusing on opening and we don't have the time to proper mentor interns, but very soon after it will reopen, so it's a possibility. And if you are lucky, you go interns elsewhere. I will join my colleagues there. Be curious, so try to understand the business, the colleague around, because each of them will be helping you to refine what would be the best. For now, it's there's no conservation training in Hong Kong. So you have to be abroad. If you speak Mandarin, you can go to Taiwan, for instance. It's not so far. It's potentially available, accessible for you. But yeah, I don't think that right now, especially for contemporary art, you can become a conservator without a formal training, or it will be also limiting your choices in life in the future. So I hope I help, and we can address that later on.
Okay, well, I feel like all of these conversations have led me to my final slide, which is to say we're actually recruiting for interns right now. So because conservation is so intensely working towards the opening, they can't take anyone this year, but some of our other teams can. So our museum operations team, who you haven't gotten a chance to meet, but there are people who work in the museum who have profession in retail, events planning, business planning. Some people have to hold spreadsheets up with numbers to all of us and make us understand them. So there's a range of colleagues, project management, that do a whole bunch of different jobs, fundraising, marketing. There's actually a lot of roles in a museum that a lot of people don't know about. So one of the things, if you filled in the survey at the beginning, you can still fill it in. It's live. It's asking you what else do you want to know about. So we'll do a couple more of these sessions, and we're hoping to bring in some of our other colleagues. So if you think there's other areas of the museum you might want to explore, let us know. But in the meantime, feel free to apply. The timeline is here. I'm going to share the web link with you now. And yeah. So I think similarly across the board, I think everyone spent time in school trying to figure things out. It wasn't obvious to everybody right away. I think museum is something you kind of tend to come to in an interesting way. So it's really great that you're here expressing all of these questions. And I would suggest also that if you want to know more, feel free to, if you find someone's name, and they might hate me for saying this, but feel free to send emails. Everyone who works in a museum is super friendly and quite generous. They're often busy, but you'll often find that they'd be happy to like have a chat with you if you're curious. And they might forward you to me for suggesting that. But I'm sure they would welcome it. So yeah, so feel free to apply. Feel free to share this recording with your colleagues when we make it available to everybody. And I hope you've learned something and you're feeling inspired. And it was great to have you here. So thank you so much. And thanks to all of you guys. You were all fantastic. I meant to say I learned a great deal about all of your trajectories, and that was really special. So I think I was about to say goodbye, but I would add that I think probably one of the other things about working in the museum that I hope you gathered is that it's a very nice collegial group of people. It tends to bring people together who are very passionate about their area, but that they're all wanting to work together for something. And I think it's an experience that I haven't had in other types of work environments. So I think that's something to just bear in mind as well if you're interested in this work. Okay, thanks so much. Bye, everybody.